Feels a lot better now that we're in the shop, and I've got a string of work lights in here. I'll show you those in a sec. They're one of my favorite tools, honestly, if you're doing a bus conversion. Having good lighting is key to seeing what you're doing and working safely. So before we get started on this project, because it's going to be a heck of a project, I wanted to kind of do a brief overview and tell you who I am and what I'm doing and what this project means to me. In 2008, if we want to go way back, that was when I drove my first bus. It was a 1976 MCI Crusader, which is it was an old Greyhound bus, and I was driving a group of, then to me, strangers to the Bonnaroo Music Festival in Manchester, Tennessee. I found the bus through an ad on Craigslist, and they were just selling rides to the festival. And the guy putting it all together was like, "Hey, does anyone else want to learn how to drive this?" And of course, I was so excited. So needless to say, I drove the first leg of that trip. I drove for 17 hours straight, and I fell in love with it. I thought it was so cool. I had 16 people behind me. We had a keg on the bus. I mean, we were having a good time. And that's where my bus life began. It was a Craigslist ad. So we got back from that trip, and we realized that taking a bus to festivals and concerts was a whole lot of fun. I know, big surprise, right? So we started actually a nonprofit and began offering affordable rides to music events in Colorado. We have Red Rocks Amphitheater outside of Denver, which is a legendary music venue. If you haven't been, you should go see a show there. It'll blow your mind. It's gorgeous. But at the time, this was before Uber and Lyft and all of that, there weren't any public transportation or private transportation options to get there aside from a taxi, which was about $80 each way. So we got a fleet of old school buses and began offering round-trip rides for $25 a person. And within 3 years, and we started this when I was 19 years old. I wasn't old enough to drink, but I was driving drunk people around in a bus. So within 3 or 4 years, we became the biggest party bus company in the state, which was remarkable. And as I finished college, we had grown to the point where it was definitely my full-time job. I was the director of operations, managing a fleet of around a dozen or so old school buses, and about 10 to 20 drivers, depending on the season. And at our peak, we were doing as many as like 30 buses a night, which is around 1,200 people. So I got acquainted with buses very quickly. And that first summer after Bonnaroo, I actually lived in that bus while we got the project off the ground because I couldn't afford rent, and I was a broke college student trying to start a business with my business partner. And looking back, it all seems so crazy, but that was how it started. And so I lived in that bus, and then for a long time, I actually didn't like school buses. I was a coach bus guy. They're amazing machines. If you ever get to really spend time around a coach, they're built like an aircraft. These school buses are like tractors. A coach bus is like a jet. So anyway, the party bus took off. It was huge. We were massive. I was a mechanic, a driver, customer service. It was a very exhausting position, but a very immersive position. And I learned a lot about buses very fast. So over the course of that time period, in 2010, I was a tour bus driver for a touring group of international musicians. I myself am a musician, and in 2012 toured the country in a school bus of my own with my band. And that particular bus, it had been converted to run on waste vegetable oil. I did the conversion. It was a DT 466, just like this one. We did about 8,000 miles on that, and that was wild. It was a totally different time back then. The market for veggie oil was just budding, and you could still get it for free. from restaurants, whereas now it's usually kept under, lock and key. So that was a great experience. Lived in that bus after we toured in it for a year, and it was barely converted. That was rough living, uninsulated, in the winter in Colorado. Really gave me a perspective on the importance of building a bus with good insulation. So fast forward to 2014, and I found myself looking for housing. The rental market in Denver then was already getting too rich for my blood. I mean, now it's insane out here. And decided to buy another bus, and this time convert it and do all the bells and whistles, all the things I'd always wanted to do. So I wanted to raise the roof and replace all the windows and do spray foam insulation and do a bunch of solar. I'd done small solar setups before, but I had been doing some calculations and stuff, and looking at residential solar panels, which at the time, the top of the line models were about 300 watts. And I figured that if I got enough panels, I could probably do solar powered air conditioning in the bus if I had good insulation and had 6 of those panels. And I don't think anybody had done that I was aware of at that point, and people said it wasn't going to be possible. So anytime you hear that, it's like, okay, give me a second, hold my beer. And so it was late July of 2014, I found my bus. This bus is called the Queen of Peace. It had been sitting at a used car dealership for like 2 years. I'd been driving by it on my way to work, and the reason that guy bought it, I think he bought it for his son's softball team or something, little league team, but it ended up not using it, so it just sat, and it was a youth group bus. And it checked all my boxes. It was rust-free, low miles, had like 132,000 miles, and it was a DT466, all mechanical, and it was the older body style, those 1980s era International dog nose buses. That was the school buses that I learned to drive on. I was actually a school bus driver for a time. I almost forgot. And my route bus was one of those. And they're bulletproof, man. There's no computers, and they just go. So anyway, saw that bus. I was like, that's the one. They wanted like $5,000 for it, but I knew it had been sitting. So I went in there and kind of beat them up on the price and got them to sell it to me for $2,000, and started the roof raise that fall. Over the course of doing the build and finishing the roof raise, I sort of jokingly applied to be on a television show called Tiny House Big Living on HGTV. It was my mom's idea. Thanks, Mom. And they hadn't had anyone in a bus on that show. It was the first season. Everybody was in kind of a conventional tiny house on wheels. And my application was a little cheeky. I was like, who knows if they'll take it. And sure enough, they bit. They were interested, and we began filming my project. And I had a blast. It was a real hoot being on camera and sharing my love of buses and building. And it was through that process, actually. So they gave me, I think, $1,200 to hire some help on the bus. And that was how I met my business partner now, Ben. He was a mutual friend who I'd never met before. And a buddy was like, oh, if you're looking for a carpenter, you gotta meet this guy, Ben. And so I met Ben. He came out to the bus with his big dog, Bo. And I hired him to do my cabinets. And God, we hit it off. I mean, we're going to be friends for life, but that's a whole nother story. Finished my bus. It turned out, way better than I ever could have imagined. And was really just so elated at the quality of what I had pulled off. So that summer, when the show finally aired, I started immediately getting hit up with people asking me to do builds for them. And that's, light bulb went off on my head. I was like, oh, I guess this could be a thing. And, at this time I didn't have an Instagram. Like, I didn't even know that there was this van life thing happening. I'd been living the bus life as I knew it, making a living off buses, driving them, driving people around already for, I mean, at this point, like 7 or 8 years. So 7 years. And then I got on Instagram and I was like, oh, I guess this is a thing. Look at this. And from there, things just took off. You know, social media put me in front of people. Being on TV put me in front of people. And, you know, ever since then, we've been booked out with as much work as we care to take on. I mean, we, you know, at our peak, we had a waiting list of, you know, almost 2 years. And so we built a business, and I realized, you know, it was time to quit the party bus company and do this full time. And so, you know, the rest is sort of history. Ben and I hired Ty, our metal fabricator. You can probably hear him grinding in the background. A carpenter named Rachel, and they're still with us as we wind down to this day. And God, I don't know how many builds we've done, but we've done a lot. We've done a lot of full builds, a lot of partial builds, and then tons of little projects, lots of solar installs. We were trying to figure out the other day, I think we've probably, in the 7 years that we've been doing this as a business, we've probably worked on like 100 buses, which is crazy. But we've learned a bunch, and I've learned a bunch, and the technology in this space has improved so much. I mean, the stuff we can do with solar now is unreal. You know, my first bus had 300 watt panels, which were like, you know, that was like the thing, you know, really amazing to have a 300 watt solar panel. And the panels I'll be putting on this bus, same size, same price even, actually slightly cheaper. They're 440 watts. And it's like every 6 months that number just ratchets up. You know, we've got lithium batteries now, which that wasn't even really a thing when I started. They were just not touchable from a price perspective. And then all the components that have been put on the market from Victron that have really kind of changed the game. And now people are installing mini splits, and like solar powered air conditioning is just like whatever, you know. It's the ground floor. Everyone can do it, which is just incredible. So that's like my quick life story. You know, I've been making a living off of buses since I was 19 in one form or another, either driving them around or turning them into homes on wheels. I've had the opportunity to work on some amazing projects. I've worked on some art projects with Meow Wolf. We've done buses that are everything from like mobile recording studios to a hat maker's shop to a mobile farmers market. I know I'm forgetting stuff, but it's just been a heck of a ride. And right now, you know, with COVID and running a small business, my second small business, I'm 35 and I'm burned out, to be honest. And we're going to be closing our doors here, and who knows what the future holds. But I love doing this work, and I sold my bus that I've been living in for 5 years about a year and a half ago, and bought a house, an old house I've been fixing up. And when that's done, I'm gonna probably rent it and move back into a vehicle of some type for a time. And that's where this bus comes into the picture, and that's where I'm going with that long-winded story. I'm going to be converting this bus to live in and travel in and work in, probably doing mobile work, mobile solar installs and things like that, helping people build off-grid dreams into reality. And I wanted to do a build series that would just kind of share not only this moment in time in my life, like for my own sake and posterity, but do a comprehensive step-by-step guide as a professional and somebody who's done this more times than I can count, for people who are either just want to watch and follow along, and that's great. You know, I love watching those kinds of videos. Or for people who are wanting to get in this lifestyle themselves and want to see how, at least how we do things in this shop, and how, you know, the problem solving that we've come up with over the years. I hope it can be informative and maybe even a little entertaining. And yeah, so if you made it this far, thanks for watching. I appreciate your attention, and I hope that you choose to subscribe to this channel and follow me as I build my last bus, at least for a while, into a home on wheels. I'll be posting videos as often as I can, and if there's anything in particular you'd love to see me cover in this build series, put it down in the comments section and let me know, what you want from me, because I'm making this as much for you as I am for myself. Thanks for watching, and let's get building.